All right. So one of the biggest things, of course, when you start a new scene in Blender, and you can see I'm still using the release candidate because this came out like a day before the final candidate, so it's pretty much the same version. But when you guys download it, you won't see that. It was just that they put that out like a day before they released the full non-release candidate, and I was like, oh, I'll try it out. And that's kind of the one I still have downloaded because, we're using the portable version. Of course, we have our recent files, but we're not working on any of those anymore. So usually when you first start up in Blender, you just hit General, right? And that'll just kind of drop a default cube in, set you to the layout workspace. And what I'll do is I'll switch to modeling workspace because I prefer that, right? Of course, remember we have industry compatible already set up. Most of you guys should already have that stuff set up. Actually, really everybody at this point should have that set up, right? Remember that is edit preferences, key map, right up here, right? So it says industry compatible, but you do have the older Blender inputs also. Not a fan of those. Yeah, industry compatible. Now, remember, one of the big things I like to set up too is I don't really want my camera and my light kind of in the viewport, right? So I'll often kind of just create my own collection for these, right? Remember, we can kind of create collections to organize stuff in here, right? So if you just like right-click in here, you'll see that the outliner context menu comes up, and you can see a new collection right here. And what we could do is we could just, left-click drag that camera and left-click drag that light into that collection, right? And what's cool about that is you can always turn the camera visibility off and turn the collection visibility off, right? And it can just be a cool way to organize so that you don't delete your camera and your light, but you don't have to worry about them being visible in your viewport because they can kind of be annoying to see them there. So I often like to put those in their own little collection that I could turn the visibility off and on for, right? So remember, you can create collections and outliners to organize stuff. Now, remember, at this point, what we also really want to start to do is start to set this up for our quadruped modeling, right? Really, we're just going to kind of get to the point where we've got the legs started today, right? Get a main body shape, kind of get it mirrored over. Now, I've shown this before, right? One of the easy things that we can always do to set up a mirror is you can always do Alt-C, right? And then loop cut right in the middle. Remember, if you just click, remember by default, your loop cut just sticks right to the middle. You have to hold down the left mouse button, drag, to actually move it somewhere that's not on the center edge loop, right? But if you just click, it puts it right in the center. That, of course, means we can go to 3 for face mode, and we can select that one, up arrow, delete, right? And remember, I have some quickie set up for these, like shift delete for faces. And then, of course, you can go set up your mirror from your modifiers, right? Right there, right? So remember, you can always go to add modifier for mirror. But what if you wanted to do this a little bit quicker? Remember, there are some add-ons, and I want to remind you guys about these things because there's some add-ons that come with Blender already. They're not free downloads, right? Like Speed Retopo, which we're going to see a little bit later this term. You have to go look for it, but it's a free, right? Text Tools, free, right? Other add-ons like BPainter, not free, but still quite very, very affordable and an awesome add-on, right? Particularly if you want to leverage texture painting even more in Blender. But there are many add-ons that come with Blender, right? And you'll see we can kind of, go say like, where is it? See, if we go to 3, right? And one of our face modes, you'll see I've got some of them already here, like Loop Tools, right? That's got like things like circle and flatten if you want to use those. You'll see Mesh Tools has like our cut faces. All of these can be assigned shortcuts also, right? Every one of these can be assigned a shortcut. Utility tools if you want to flip normals, right? But there's also auto mirror right here. Now remember, if you go to edit, preferences again, right? So preferences is kind of where a lot of cool things are at in Blender. So if we go to edit preferences, key map, of course, is where you can assign shortcuts, right? So if you want to assign different quick keys in here, because not everything is an exact tool that you could kind of right-click to assign a shortcut to, right? So occasionally, like for me, I switched around my quick keys for the stencil stuff, right? That's one of the reasons why when I was deuce painting occasionally, I'm like, oh, I've got to remember what the quick keys are by default because I have different ones set up at home. Key binding, that's kind of where that stuff's at, right? But remember, there's also this section called add-ons, right? And in add-ons, this is where if you want to install one that you downloaded, you just click on this and you find it. It's a zip file, add-ons are zip files. And you just double click on them and it installs it. So it's super painless to install an add-on. Just download it wherever you want to download it, click on install button, go find it, double click on it, and boom, it loads it in. You'll see it in here. But you do need to turn them on, right? And you'll see that I've turned some already on, right? You'll see that UV layout's on, right? We can see that modifier tools is on. That's kind of how I get the apply all, kind of delete all ones here when a modifier is applied. So that one's kind of cool, gives you a few extra little buttons right there. Auto mirrors right there, right? Auto mirror, edit mesh tools, loop tools, so you can kind of see those are all there. Down here we can see that I've got magic UV turned on for UVs, and text tools, right? Because those are add-ons that I've made sure to download and turned on. So remember, there's actually tons of stuff in here. Experiment, play. If you're curious, usually you can kind of open them up and see the documentation, right? So kind of neat that there's a bunch of add-ons that actually come with Blender. And so there's some extra functionality that Blender comes with that you just need to make sure to turn on the add-on. And it's as simple as checking it on. You just check mark it, right? And that's it. You'll see that stuff in there. So that's how I have these, right? And Auto Mirror is one of those. And what's cool about Auto Mirror is you'll notice that you can have editable on, right? And you can even toggle edit. And you can pick your access and all that stuff. You don't want to apply mirror on because that'll kind of make it final. It's like actually applying the modifier. And we want it to stay a modifier. So when we hit Auto Mirror, you'll see that that automatically kind of cuts it down the middle on the x-axis, mirrors it over, and turns on all this stuff. Clipping, you know, the on cage stuff. So Auto Mirror is kind of cool. It kind of automates a couple of those steps for you. Right? Neat. You don't have to use that. You can, you know, pretty easily delete half the model, put an edge loop down the center, and then do it. And you'll now notice these guys show up because I've got a modifier in there. That's what the modifier tools add-on was. So remember, those are some great add-ons to have on, right? They give us a couple of extra features in Blender that are useful. So remember, those add-ons I always like to have on at a minimum. And there's our mirror, and everything is all set up for that. So of course, remember our modifier stack here. If you click on Add Modifier, we also want to go and apply a subdivision surface modifier. Now, technically you don't, right? You could work straight low res the whole time. That is going to make more work for you, though, right? This, for me, kind of not working with subdivisional surfaces, at least when it's appropriate, right? For like our building stuff and desks, it's not appropriate, just low res, bevel it. But for our car, for characters, creatures, things that have a lot of roundness, a lot of curvature, that nowadays you're going to have be tens of thousands of polygons, even for video games. The idea of not leveraging a subdivisional surface modifier, at least somewhat, is kind of a vestigial organ, right? It goes back many, many years to basically when we had to be way more efficient, right? We can't go hog wild, but we have a lot more polygons to work with in just about all pipelines, a lot more, right? So you can actually leverage a subdivisional surface decently and still end up with a quite efficient mesh that'll work with the vast majority of pipelines. So we're going to leverage this as a shortcut because otherwise you have to put in every edge loop by hand and you have to do a lot of that shaping, right? Yeah, you can adjust the weight and kind of edge flow stuff, but that's far from perfect and it still takes time. So I leverage this because it just saves me time and effort. But remember, one of the biggest things is if you use a subdivision surface modifier, you better apply it, right? We still want a low resolution mesh that looks good, right? This is just a shortcut, so we don't have to do every edge loop and all the shaping by hand. So I'm going to apply a subdivision surface modifier. And remember, there's two more things that we need to do for this. One, we like to turn on that little triangle, right? That way we don't see the control cage. I'm also going to go 4 for object mode and right-click, right? Because remember, right-click brings up the object context menu. And at the very top is Shade Smooth. And that kind of takes care of that shading so that it blends the normals between these polygons so it kind of looks like it's collectively one object, right? If it's shade flat, you see how it's kind of looks faceted like a gem, which if you're working on a gem, fine. But most of the time you're not. So Shade Smooth usually you're going to want to do. And you can do that on specific polygons, right? I just do it to the whole object here, but you can do it to specific polygons. So remember, 4 is object mode, 3 is face mode, right? And now you can see we've got our kind of quadruped started up. Probably a good idea to maybe go File, Save As, right? Or just Control S to save. And what we could do is we were going to call this quadruped, right? And if you really want to follow a good naming convention, right? Something like game art underscore, right? Quadruped. There we go. And then that should work as a Blender file. There we go. And now we got that saved. Now remember, I honestly, particularly when I'm working on stuff like our car and our quadruped, even our crab from earlier, I like using the tweak tool a lot. If you're building a desk or a building, the tweak tool is not a good idea, right? So there are many modeling things when you're building stuff that's very rectangular, very precise, right? If it's going to be like a lamp, even if it's a cylindrical shape, tweak tool, not a good idea to use, right? Stuff that's got much more of an organic feel, like characters, creatures, or even like a car that's got a lot of nice, cool, curved organic forms. Tweak tool is actually pretty awesome. So I use tweak tool for shaping a lot, actually for probably more than not of my shaping. That doesn't mean it's always appropriate. Remember, your move, rotate, and scales are here. And remember, Q is your selection tool, but it also toggles you. So if you keep hitting Q, it toggles you through all these options, right? By default, it's usually rectangle select. If you hold down and you have a mouse button on that, they're all right here as well. And you'll notice because we have 5-button mouses here and I have one at home, I like having circle select and tweak on the mouse buttons, right? It just saves me the effort of having to go into a menu or hit Q to toggle through, right? So it's kind of very cool, very useful. What is going on there? Why is that not working? There we go. I just had to press it harder. Sorry. So I like tweak tool, right? It is there, but if you just hit Q, it'll eventually toggle that to there. And remember, what's cool about tweak tool is all you have to do is left click drag, right? You don't have to select and then grab on whatever manipulator handle you want. So tweak, you're going to find, could be a very quick, awesome way to kind of start to quickly shape the body without having to do 2 clicks, right? Because even if you use your regular move tool, right, which technically will actually tweak also, so believe it or not, if your move tool's on, it'll tweak as well. But generally, we select and then middle mouse button for most stuff. So for me, though, the tweak tool is just kind of already that. I don't have to worry about the manipulator handle. You just left-click drag, and there you go. So I can kind of drag this out, because remember, this is going to be a quadruped, so it's going to have a longer body this way. Remember, we have clipping on, right, for our mirror. See our mirror modifiers over here, clipping's on. Auto mirror will do that for you. So auto mirror will take care of that stuff for you if you need it. And we just kind of do a little bit of shaping here, right? If I go to 2 for edge mode, I could bring down those edges there. 3 for face. And you notice how your tweak tool stays on? So you can switch between your different selection tools. Remember, technically, you can also hold down Shift and turn on all 3 selection types at once. And then you see how you kind of get to a multi-resolution, which actually works quite well. It works a lot better than mine is in many ways. But I find it so easy just to kind of hit 1, 2, or 3, and my tweak tool stays on, that I actually just do it that way now, right? Because it's just, I don't have to worry about it accidentally grabbing an edge or a vertex if I don't want it to. But technically, you can turn on all of those to kind of have a multi-select function. Now, there's only so much we could do at this stage, right? There really is only so much we could do at this stage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Alt-C for loop cut, right? Remember, Alt-C is our quick key for loop cut. It is right here in the menu, though. And I can just left click drag to kind of put a few edge loops in here. That should be a good starting point for us. I think I'll even put one kind of right about through here, and maybe even one through there as well, just to give us enough to start to kind of allow us to work on this, right? And of course, it's all working beautifully because of mirror. I can switch back to the tweak tool. Remember, clipping, right? If I go back to 3, see how it keeps that center line together? That's what clipping does. And so what I can do is I can easily come in here, hit 2 for edges, and I can start to bring down some of these edges to kind of refine some of this body shape for ourselves, right? So we can easily come in here and kind of start to pull up these for where the legs are going to go in a minute here. I could start to pull these down and in a little bit. You can, of course, hit 3 to switch to face mode if you want to grab faces instead. Remember, we're using Alt left to rotate our camera. And you do want to keep kind of moving around your different views, right? Always good to kind of keep moving down around those different views. There we go. And slowly we can start to see that we can kind of build up a bit of a body here, right? And I'll kind of maybe bring some of these in here a little bit. 2 to edge mode, right? So remember, you can kind of keep swapping back and forth to make those adjustments that you want. But we're really just kind of trying to take advantage of a little bit of shaping on this from the different views to get at least a decent starting point for kind of like a quadruped body, right? So it's really just a cube that we kind of got set up with our mirror and subdivision surface. Remember, if you go to the little kind of V right here next to kind of the 2 circles overlapping, remember, you can go in there and you can turn on statistics, and that'll show you your proper polygon count, right? If you go to 4, it will show you the full subdivisional at 512. So right now, if we were to apply this, that's only 512 polygons. Nothing is that simple in just about any pipeline now, not even close, right? So I went back to 3 for face mode. And now what we want to start to do is we want to start to extrude some polygons here. Now, believe it or not, I really like to kind of extrude off of here, right? Because really when you look at legs, they kind of come off from like a side bottom angle. And so by having these extra edge loops in here that I can kind of pull up, that gives us a nice angle to work from with this. But that's also why I pull these up, because there's kind of that 45-degree angle kind of the appendage kind of joins up into. And of course, we go to 3 for face mode. And we could select a face there. Control E for extrusion, right? Remember, extrude right here. Control E. And then middle mouse button, because that does our view extrude. E for rotate. Middle mouse button, because that's our view rotate. R for scale, middle mouse button, because that's our uniform scale. If I want, I could switch back to tweak tool to kind of straighten the shape up a little bit, right? You saw it's kind of at a diagonal. So you want to straighten that up a bit there. Maybe E for rotate again. Control E for extrusion. Maybe another R for scale. Middle mouse button. Remember, middle mouse button by default will kind of do your view move and your view rotate, but it will do uniform scale, right? It'll scale all 3 at the same time. Control E for extrusion again. Maybe a little bit of scale down there. And you can kind of start to see we're getting a bit of a leg. W for move. And then I can go back to here. Control E for extrusion, middle mouse button. And of course, maybe move that out a little bit. E for rotate, right? Middle mouse button for that. So there we go. Maybe a little bit of rotation there. R for scale, middle mouse button. Control E again. Remember, that's just your extrude tool, but it's the quick key, Control E. E for rotate. Remember, you want to make sure that this leg is going to kind of be more of that rear leg that a lot of quadrupeds have, where it's kind of, it bends kind of backward a little bit. So you can look at dog or cat legs. R for scale. I could always come in here and do a little bit of tweaking as well. Maybe bring those in a little bit. Maybe W for move, bring it up. E for rotate, middle mouse button. Then another Control E for extrusion. Right? Now, at this point, I do want this kind of leg to kind of be bending down a little bit more. So I'm going to do one more small extrusion right about there. But really, what we want to do is switch to this front one and extrude this down to kind of be the starting point for the back of that kind of foot there, right? Now, of course, we can come in here 2 for edge mode, and we can kind of just adjust these shapes a little bit more, right? We can bring these out a little bit more to kind of really start to pull that shape a little bit more to where we want it to be. Remember, double left click selects an edge loop, so you can always hit W for move. Kind of bring these back a little bit. Maybe even in a little bit there. Remember, W for move when you're in the move tool. And you can kind of start to see we're getting that. Now, we're not quite done with this. It's kind of about where we'll stop for today. We still got a lot more to do on this. But once again, you can see that building the kind of main body segments for a creature is pretty straightforward and easy, right? Particularly with box modeling methods. So really, this starting point for us, I just hit Control S for save, is just to kind of get some edge loops in with loop cut and do some extrusions on some faces, right? Obviously, you want to keep this all quads. Having your mirror on and subdivisional will make your life easier, right? And just to put the loop cuts in where I put them in, and do the extrusions on the polygons I do them on, right? It's kind of those bottom ones right there. And then just shaping is kind of, up to you. Kind of, if you want it to be a lean or athletic beastie, you can have that. If you want it to be kind of a big, bulkier one, you can do that. But that's just going to be all about kind of shape form, right? And kind of pulling those shapes in and out and around and all that stuff. Keep in mind that we're going to apply our subdivisional surface soon, so we have more geometry to work with. But we want to kind of block in the main head, kind of main foot structure stuff. So we have a little more blocking in to do tomorrow for that. Save that now. All right, and I'm going to turn off our recording.